In this lesson, we'll start the process of adding materials to our car. So here we are back in Houdini. We're picking up right where we left off with the last lesson. Houdini 15 offers an amazing library of ready-to-use materials. Now, in order to access this material library, all you need to do is come over to the lower right-hand pane, and you'll see this Material Palette tab. Let's go ahead and click on that. We'll just expand this a little bit so we can see a little bit better what's going on here. Okay, and now we can see this list of materials here on the left-hand side. You have the generic materials listed at the top, and all of the materials that are listed beneath them are usually made up of some variation of the source generic material. That'll make a little more sense as we move through the process of adding materials to our car. For now, let's continue to look through the material library. We see that we have shaders for hair and skin. We have materials for blue cloth, red velvet, soft beige leather. We have a ton of industrial materials here as well. Some for liquids and metallics. For right now, let's start talking about the tire. How can we add some materials to the tire that actually make it look like black rubber? Well, back up here in our industrial materials list, we have a black rubber material that we can use. Now, you can just grab it directly from the material library here and drag it over into the viewport. However, even if your mouse is just on that part of the tire, as soon as you let go, Houdini will try to apply that material to the entire car. Let's see exactly what happened in our network view when we did that. Let's jump back over to the concept car here. Now we're looking at our network view. We'll jump up one level to the OBJ or top level here. And on the concept car node itself, the second tab over is the material tab. Now, putting anything inside of the material tab here, anytime that you were to add your shader here, it's going to override anything that's inside of the concept car. So any geometry that's here inside of the concept car is going to get that black rubber added to it, unless it's been otherwise specifically mentioned somewhere in the network. And since we haven't messed with any kind of materials whatsoever, Houdini is just applying this black rubber as a blanket to every bit of geometry inside of this container. We don't really want to do that right now. So let's go ahead and just select this path here, this material path, and we'll hit delete. And by removing it, we no longer have any materials on our car at all now. Well, what we need to do is actually use a node inside of the container called a material node. Now, the material node will allow us to apply materials to specific groups of primitives. For example, let's go ahead and dive inside of our wheel 1 node. This is where we've constructed all the geometry for our wheel. We'll frame that up. And what we want to do is we want to create groups for probably this rubber tire element here. All right, this stuff here. That'll all be the same black rubber material. We also probably will have some chrome elements, and that'll probably be this inner part of the wheel, these things in here, as well as our little tendrils that we made. And then the brake drum will probably be a third group because we'll have a different material applied to it that'll be sort of a darker metal color for the brake drum. So really what we need to do is to create 3 different groups of primitives that we can apply different materials to, and then we'll be able to add those materials over to our tire and wheel assembly. Well, how do we go about creating those groups? Well, creating a group is a fairly simple process in Houdini. All we have to do is select the primitives that we want and then make the group using the tab menu. I'm going to go ahead by selecting the elements that I want to be the black rubber of the tire here. So there's a really neat trick when you're doing selections for larger groups like this inside of Houdini. Instead of coming in with your marquee tool and trying to select just what you want here and then adding the ones from the side, we're going to actually use our edges as guides and then transfer that selection over to be the primitives that we want. Follow along here in the viewport. We'll change our selection mode over to be edges. We'll select using the edge loop method that we've already looked at. So we want to hover over an edge, hold down A on the keyboard, and middle click. So that will allow us to grab this edge, but what we need are primitives. Well, we can simply hover over that selected edge, right-click, come down to Convert Selection, and then we choose to Primitive Selection, okay? So that allows us to select the primitives on either side of the edge. So using this technique, let's go ahead and select edge loops for, let's go back to our edge select mode here on the left-hand side toolbar. So let's go ahead and select edge loops for this edge loop. Now I'm holding down Shift whenever I do this, so Shift and A on the keyboard so that we get the loop. Then middle click here, 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 and this guy, here, here. Okay? Now that we've got all of those edges selected, all we have to do is right-click, Convert Selection to Primitive Selection. That was a lot easier than trying to come through here and individually select all of these primitives all the way around, and then trying to get a marquee around here without grabbing any of this geometry inside. What we were able to do was basically use the edge loop detection technology as a way of doing some super grouping. So now that we have our primitive selected here, let's go ahead and hit Tab with our mouse hovering over the scene view and just type out GROUP and go ahead and click on that node. That will allow us to create a group of primitives. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time in the group node here talking about all of these options. So what we want to do for right now is just kind of look and see what we've got going on here. First thing that we notice is that we have a group node called Group 1. Okay, we also notice that the group name is Group 1. If we use our middle click method on our node here, we'll also see that that group shows up in our middle click information pop-up box. We see that we have one primitive group and it's called Group 1. There are 320 primitives in them, and here are all of the primitives listed out that are a part of that group. Let's go ahead and rename this group because Group 1 isn't very descriptive. So let's go ahead and rename the node itself. Now I like to sort of use this nomenclature here, just do MAT. That way I know that this group was made specifically for a material. So I'll call it Matte Tire Rubber Group. Okay, and I also want to change the group name itself. So let's go ahead and change the group name just so that they match. I'm just going to highlight that directly here in the parameters view, copy it, and paste it into the group name area. So now if I middle click on this node and look at my information pop-up, I can see that I have one group with 320 primitives in it, and it's a material group for the tire rubber. So this really is a lot more descriptive, and it gives me an idea right off the bat exactly what that group was made for and what its use is. Now let's continue to make these other groups for the chrome area and for the brake drum. We'll pick that up in the next lesson.